Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where on planet Earth you are today. So happy to be here with you today in season 1 of Research Aromatica's 7th episode on community-supported forest restoration in Ghana. Today, we're going to be joined by Wellington Baiden, and first I'm going to read you his bio and show you a short video introducing him and his project, and then he will come on live with us for a discussion, and at the end, a question and answer period. So Wellington has become a dear friend. He has decades of experience in forestry, ecotourism, environmental conservation, community livelihood support, and natural resource policy analysis. He is an internationally recognized social entrepreneur and an innovator in agroforestry. He also is a mentor and makes time to mentor young people and is an environmental educator. He works with the United Nations, with the World Bank, with the IUCN, with the government of Ghana and other countries, as well as chiefs, NGOs, and communities. Wellington Baiden is a man of the people and also a man who uses the structures around him to create more prosperity environmentally, socially, and economically. So without further ado, I'm going to play a very short video to give you a taste of his project in Ghana.
So, can I have the ladies come forward? Okay.
You buy them.
So, you buy them for them. Okay. You can pass it around to the gentleman, but that bag's going to smell like that for weeks.
Walking in the flower garden, it's quite beautiful. It's very nice to see that there's an area like this in Ghana that others, whether they're here in Ghana or even outside of the country, can come to and actually enjoy nature.
We thought we could intercrop with food crops and keep it going by selling those food crops to generate short-term revenue. Except that the community and the workers kept eating everything even before it was ready. Now, our main focus is the Experiential Learning Center, where we're going to teach people what we have learned over the last 20 years. This is the only way that we can quickly disseminate what we've learned, because it's all about training and empowering people to also go out there and do it themselves.
Great. Wellington, I'd like to ask you to turn on your camera and unmute yourself so we can start the presentation. Hi, Wellington.
Hi, Jeanette. How are you today?
Great. It's wonderful to be here with you today. I'm going to start the slides here.
Okay.
So we are completely live, broadcasting from the United States and from Ghana simultaneously. It's amazing we have the technology to bring people together like this. So please forgive us if there's any hiccups, but we're ready to start the presentation. Wellington, please let's start with a brief overview of what Portal Estates is and how you started it.
Okay, so Portal Forest Estates is a model sustainably managed forest estate. When we started initially in the year 2000, we were just focused on growing some fast-growing tree species to make sure that down the line we would have a renewable and sustainable source of raw material for our wood processing factory, which was then basically engaged in making doors and builders joinery for the real estate industry in Ghana. So in 2000, we started, and when we started, of course, we all had our eye on a carbon credit dividend, because that was around the time when these conversations were beginning about carbon credits and benefits and payments for protecting the forest and ecosystem. It didn't really gain much traction on a national level till around 2009, when the Forestry Commission, in partnership with the World Bank, decided to adopt the RED model and was one of 4 or 5 countries chosen in Africa. There was initially 3 countries, and then another 2 were added to model a RED Plus pilot program. And Portal got chosen along with 6 other projects in the country to share their model and also to engage in conversations based on the experiences we were having and interactions with the communities to shape what then became the new forest policy legislation in Ghana, which moved us away from an industry which was basically primarily focused on timber and the harvest of timber from the forest to what it is now, an industry which looks at the forest holistically and not just in terms of the forest alone. I mean, not just in terms of the trees alone, but also in terms of the habitat, eco habitat within the forest, the non-traditional forest, the non-traditional forest products, which were not timber, and also the communities and people living within the forest landscape or on the fringes of the forest landscape, and accounting for the impact they were having on the forest, and looking at this in terms of what incentives and deterrence and monitoring and tracking could be put into place under the RED Plus program and also under the FLEC program, which was responsible for for tracing and monitoring of where trees were coming from to ensure that they were coming from legal and sustainable sources. Yeah. So from 2009 up to 2017, when the new forest policy was passed, we, together with IUCN and a few other companies, in collaboration with the Climate Change Desk, which the Forestry Commission established to be able to investigate and come up with proven interventions based on ours and the other pilots' experiences to inform and shape the new policy, which was duly passed in 2017.
Wow. So you've had not only an impact on these 210 acres intensively, but you've been able to expand the agroforestry model into policy across Ghana. And so we're looking at an implementation model that you've developed of working with industry and farmers with government support. And you've really mastered that, Wellington. And that's something that really we want to highlight, is that by being a part of the REDD Plus program and creating a model that could be replicable, it also influenced national policy, national forest policy. And, you know, what a contribution to forests worldwide.
Yes, very much so. In fact, the policy ideas that came out of this process included countries from South America, Europe, and all over the world, even as far as Nepal, under the support of the IUCN, the BMU from Germany, and the final dialogue to discuss and decide on what benefit sharing arrangements would pertain under Red Plus happened through this pilot. The adoption of jurisdictional VCS, whereby it was no longer necessary for individuals wanting to get involved with planting trees for a possible carbon benefit, had to do this by themselves with horrendous costs. It was accepted that the carbon indicators would be taken on a national level basis, which then freed a lot of the cost of setting up a Red Plus project.
Yeah. So now you did that using an agroforestry model. So let's talk about what agroforestry is for the viewers. We've made a slide here to give a demonstration, but Wellington, can you interpret what agroforestry is for the audience?
Okay, so basically, agroforestry is a system whereby longer-term growing trees are mixed with shorter-term crops in a sort of multi-story agricultural approach, i.e., you would have your trees. You could then plant vines on your trees, and as an understory crop, you could plant shrubs, rhizomes, grasses to yield an income in the short term, whilst the trees which took longer to grow were growing. We stumbled on this, or we had to come up with something around this idea when we realized that the actual practical benefits from carbon payments were and are still a long way away, even though a lot of progress has been made. Trying to get so many countries to agree on something is not easy. We thought we were through when the Paris Climate Change Accords were signed, but we all know what has happened to them. So we were trying to focus on a model which would still work and would be sustainable with or without carbon credits, because we realized that we could not rely on carbon credits. So we've tried to come up with a model that is self-sustainable. And our agroforestry mix focused on essential oils, right? You can have agroforestry with cash crops, with all kinds of different permutations. But for our model, what we have focused on within our agroforestry mix is aromatic plants, crops, herbs, and spices to create and market essential oils to the global marketplace.
Right. Well, so here's an example from Portal Forest Estates of agroforestry. You can see the arrow there showing you an endangered indigenous tree quadrant. So within Portal Estates, because I've been fortunate enough to visit Portal Estates, within Portal Estates, there's quadrants where different plantings are happening. And so you can see in the back there, that's the endangered indigenous trees. And in the front, in the foreground, you're seeing the lang-lang trees growing. And so this is a great example. We have another slide showing an example from Portal Forest. And here's another one with the endangered trees growing in the background and black pepper growing in the foreground. So Wellington, you really laid out the the economics of why it's so important to have an agroforestry model. And I appreciate that, because often as an environmentalist, I go right to the ecological benefits. But it's so important to recognize that agroforestry is an approach that has economic and environmental as well as social benefits intermixed together. They're interrelated. And so as the economics are working out better for investors and for the community in reforestation, it's also building up ecosystem services and soils and biodiversity and habitat, all kinds of benefits to the environment. So it's certainly one that I'm very passionate about. So I was very excited to see Portal Estates and what you've accomplished there. Tell us a little bit more about planting the endangered trees of Ghana, the indigenous trees, and why that was important to you.
Okay, well, we did have some remnant of secondary forest on the forest estate land on the 210 acres. And so what we looked at basically was planting trees which then could become a source of mother trees using an enrichment planting approach. So the first thing was to conserve the indigenous trees which were there already and add to them by planting in strip lines to ensure that a lot of the trees which are going extinct, we would have a source of mother trees off them so that we could then produce seedlings from these trees and have sustainable and renewable source of seedlings for other projects. So for instance, if we're asked to replicate what we're doing on some other land, we can, get mahogany seedlings, emre, ofram, wawa, odum, edinam. These are some of the top timber tree species, and they are kind of difficult to find. But if a concerted effort was made to replant them, they could quite quickly be large areas where they can be repopulated with these tree seedlings, and that conservation approach also has meant that we can sustain that 100 acres of conservation, which has a lot of wildlife habitat within it, and we can sustain and maintain that from the sale of tree seedlings without the necessity of cutting the trees down. So we would get an eco-tourist dividend from it, from people coming to see these trees, which are not so easily accessible. And also we could ensure that we could replicate either by putting them in projects which we were involved with, or sell them out to others who would want to do something similar themselves.
That's wonderful. So let's talk about your Cedarella trees, because they're quite special to Portal Forests. Tell us about these trees. What's their significance?
Okay, so our model really sought to balance competing demands on the forest, right? Obviously, like we just talked about, the indigenous tree species, which are very important in terms of creating ecosystem habitat and biodiversity, okay? But we could not also get away from the fact that timber is very much sought after resource, and with the explosion in world population, more houses obviously will need to be built, more furniture, and all the things that timber is applied for. So we recognize that, yes, you could not rule out timber completely. And to make the model sustainable and self-supporting, we decided to grow some fast-growing timber species. we chose cedrela because it is still possible to grow things under cedrela as an understory crop, whereas teak, which is quite popular, kills everything underneath it with the exception of cardamom. So we chose cedrela, which is a redwood. It is used for high-end furniture. It is used for high-end packaging, for humidors, and high-end cabinetry as well. We planted it in 2000, and at the moment we're harvesting a part of the trees we planted for timber applications, and it is our aim to reinvest the money that we would earn from planting cedrela to take our project to the next level. When we started planting cedrela, it was about €50 a cubic meter. That was in 2000. As of last year, before COVID, it went as high as $1,200 a cubic meter.
Wow.
And then with the pressures of COVID and companies, importing companies closing down or suspending their operation, it came down to $850, and right now the country as a whole is not exporting; is waiting for this COVID issue to be resolved. But the takeaway from this is that, over 20 years, the value of the asset went from €50 to even €850. So it certainly does make economic sense to put in a fast-growing tree model within the managed forest estate model in terms of generating medium-term income.
Yeah, and what is this green wall we're looking at right now? Can you illustrate that for the audience?
Yeah, so when we started planting, we actually put in seedlings all around the 210 acres to create a living wall to demarcate the boundaries of our estate.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It really has a quite a visual impact when you see this green wall surrounding this area. Not quite the same for your neighbors, but I know you're working on that.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the fact that you also have a nursery, but here's some other activities going on at Forest Estates that you have. And so I'm really hearing you say that diversity of activities and economic functions is really important to the overall success of an agroforestry project. And so you have many other things going on. We're going to talk more about the aromatic plants and essential oils in a moment. But are there any other here that you would like to talk a little bit more about? Maybe the ecotourism or the bamboo processing. I know experiential learning is also very near and dear to your heart. So any of those that you want to just expand on a little bit?
Yes, by all means. So we look at our forest estate as a green supermarket, right? With the products being provided by nature. So charcoal, for example, is still very much in demand and still very much one of the main energy sources for communities in Ghana. It has led to a great deal of deforestation. So that was one of the problems that we looked at in terms of providing a sustainable alternative raw material for the production of charcoal. So within our forestry mix, we introduced Giracedia as like a woodlot and put black pepper around it because black pepper is a vine, okay? So we would harvest the Giracedia, which needs to be pruned every year anyway. And that supplies a source of raw material for making charcoal. And also bamboo, because bamboo, as you know, is a grass. It takes 2 to 3 years to be established. And really from year 4 or 5, you can harvest it and then it just keeps bringing forth anew. So bamboo we looked at in terms of not only charcoal, but bamboo cups, half pipe plates, bamboo straws. We're looking at the many ways in which we can use bamboo to replace plastic. So that is one of the things we're looking at. And because it's so fast growing, it also is an early revenue generator. Okay. For experiential learning, we believe that it is when you involve people in what you're doing that they can understand and grasp it very quickly. So we're trying to move away from the old approach of having conferences and stakeholder consultations, etc., in hotels, etc., which are far removed from the forest or what is happening on the ground in the forest. So we're in the process of building an experiential learning center where people can come and stay and partake in tree planting, harvesting for aromatic plants, conservation activities, what have you. So even if we were to hold a discussion or a conference or whatever, it would happen within the forest setting where the issues are real and immediate, and people can learn in a practical way without it being a theoretical exercise, And around the same idea of experiential learning, we're building our ecotourism concept, which again is a question of come and immerse yourself, experience, and then hopefully go back with some desire to implement in your own small way, even if it's just planting 3 fruit trees in your home, right? But at least come and experience and go do something, no matter how small.
Yeah.
Enough people do something small, it becomes something huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, communities are a big part of your work, and you don't do this work in a vacuum. You're embedded within areas that people have been farming cocoa and other crops for quite some time. And you've had a lot of experience working with the communities and being able to determine how best that communities can support reforestation efforts and how the reforestation efforts can also support the communities. And so I want to play a short video of you and your team working with the community and their teams to come together around reforestation and the benefits of it and the challenges. And before I do, we have here a graph of how you are doing your work with communities and the experiential learning approach. And I just have to say that this is really one of the things Wellington is an expert at, is how to replicate and expand and to work with communities so that reforestation benefits the communities and that it works, right? Because oftentimes in development, people make decisions for communities and bring projects to them and inform them of what's going to be done for them. And often those projects fail. We see a lot of failures in development with that approach. And whether it's foreigners or from people inside the countries, that approach normally fails. But in your approach, it's a completely engaged community approach. And that's really one of the secrets of what's made Portal Forest Estates so successful. So Wellington, if it's okay with you, I will go straight to the video and then we can talk more about the community engagement afterwards. Does that sound good?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So let's roll this video.
Forest in Yumani be as a papa, a Muslim year free. It's the animal barber can't be kakra afa forest in Yuma are more ye a woman.
See, our government, why a crowd there? Papa, there, Quanya was saying, what started there? Would you, dear? As I obey first. You there a map. Obian nefu.
Abrofono, no one wap a map. Map on all the plan. Into a pede who plan na yare yen. What paper do. So there, if be a farm no, or there a map near the 2 paper do.
Say, the map no, now we cocoa 2 acres in near Dunum. Now we cocoa 10 acres in near a Numnuma, and there was a Nunya scape.
Mewo, 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 mewe. Vititanya fawudi, yes, me at to me and do, baby.
I say, Fumuno. Your new man for so be bro hank in your free. Brony friend on NTFP, non timber forest produce. Say, ya papa, I didn't hear see her. And me and I said, no, may bet me a be in rule. I did say, when you're and one imre, impo woman. I nay, may and crobbe brew her first and lean your woman from and no cook massy. I said, no much in your home.
Yen to me, Yano. As I see you are quite ya, and we and papa. Until Yen in Riano. Mawuna koko natural na ya papa abeye na koko no enye aduma nti anytime bia te se bwadru bobo wansa na koko no aso nti sisi ya mama ba chiri ya ye hu ide ye be fa monde no so
the koko we said in sisi ma oyema koko sisi ya koko board crampo also what can damage mezi ya ye ho but sisi ya no also once in there koko farm bia organ bia anen obodua indua at least by 40%.
The Abani bed and be the honest. Jadi Kano, answer no be bet me as you know. Just a unya in Miaba, and I say a dia, bia or dibia naba. Nemo Yetabiana, Yadi dia, abba in the dia. A boy, it me tread the be at the sewer man, if then so, a quiet moon. Nursery netia, to an age and we are basso.
Diana was ye nurse no ye nurse na yankasa ye duane de aye adwuma na de nurse ama aban
and Pempi now say project be basana ye de shama dwunum nti mu wram na say be bosome nan bosome num afem mienu ibisa ma na de anwinwin ne abamubuo eba timetimi aka say ye ba begia tuma na say ye be tue ho ache say ye be titi nnua si enua kra na se ye do yemfu a nua beba mu no ye betete no eno so beboa se ye dua flowers na enum ya de flower no ne yemfu nuane na yebenya no eno ye bedi nemum enche kra ba busu minsia mu no flower na bedua no eno so hu skaba eno de ewuye kuani no nkwa de nya de ebedi agya wonso benya bi a so de beto wabosu
so ya de pe na de na wu nti mini ni ye kan ye hobum sasase no si se ansa ne bedu ya so ya de ne be janua nti ase si am kase sisi yi enam se janua no wasu nti kokwa ye dua nyina aye fefe
ya kase ye hu kwa ye te da ma ache nti ye nam na frama afa ye ho na ndua no na aye me fa keke
me ba de ba ko mi ho amani je won sa so modua flowers bi wa ha flower no eso a na esa abodua ba na o de decorate dem no stronko kura ewo haba mu nya mama akwa pro ya mi she bi da kitimba tumenya ajo fa
All right, I'm just going to bring the slides back up. And so, Wellington, do you want to say anything about the video that we just watched?
Well, that was made possible in collaboration with IUCN and FORIC. That was when we had the interaction with the farmers to address the issues of what we needed to do to get them on board as replication partners. Now, in terms of a replication partnership, we will be supplying from our nursery the seedlings necessary for them to also grow aromatic plants, etc. We will be giving them a guaranteed off-taker contract, so they're more or less contract farmers or contract replicators, as the case might be. And added to that now, we've added a beehives dimension so that honey could also be one of the short-term revenue generators, right? So within 6 months, they could start seeing revenue from that as well. The idea is to allow them or to train them to replicate what we have done on 2.5 hectares of land, okay? And because we're using a mosaic forest landscape restoration approach, these little mosaic of farms would then eventually fit together to become a much bigger patchwork. So instead of the case where we have trees and our surrounding farms, etc., don't, then you would have trees spread throughout the whole landscape. Whereas at the same time, it retains the capacity to be able to give them the income they were already getting from their farms. But with the intervention we're looking to make, that would be enhanced. It would include forest restoration piece. And because they would also be farming aromatic plants and doing beehives, etc., they would be getting an immediate dividend from that within 6 months without having to wait on carbon credits. So if carbon credits is eventually sorted and it comes through, that's fine. But for people to protect something, they have to have a reason to, and that invariably means they have to derive a benefit from it.
Yeah.
So this is what has led to the model we have eventually ended up with after 20 years of trial and error.
Yeah, now that short-term revenue is so important for the longer-term restoration efforts. And thank you for really pointing that out. What we're seeing here are just some numbers of aromatic species that you planted just on Portal Forest Estates. This is not plantings across Ghana that you've worked with communities on. These are plantings within Portal Estates.
That's right.
Yeah. And so here we have some black pepper, some lemongrass. But let's see, let's show our viewers what you focused in on in terms of aromatic species, since so many of the audience works in essential oils. Here's your 6 main essential oils. And I'm sure there's reasons why you have chosen each one of these in particular, but if there's a couple of them that you want to talk about in more detail, Wellington, please share with us why these were some of the ones that you chose to grow.
Okay, well, we actually have 20 essential oil lines, okay?
Okay, so not just these 6, you have 20 in total.
Yeah.
Okay.
These six were the ones we started off with initially. Ylang ylang, because it was very much sought after in the perfume industry and in the natural beauty products industry. And it could guarantee that we would be getting a very high revenue if we were successful in growing ylang. So that was one of the crops we looked at. Citronella, because funnily enough, if you take the amount of citronella you have to grow on an acre, the yield of citronella in economic terms, an acre of citronella would give you just as much as ylang over the same space. But the ylang is much, much more expensive than the citronella, but it also has a smaller yield than the citronella. That's what makes it so expensive, right? And then the planting density of citronella is much more than that of ylang. So it makes up for the difference in price by the share density and the yield. Okay. So there are all these different considerations to take into account. You can't just look at price alone. Okay. Patchouli, again, for the natural hair products industry, which is quite large here and growing. Patchouli is very much sought after because we're reliably informed by those who use it for hair products that it gives a natural curl to the hair in their hair products. So it's very much sought after. And it also has antiseptic and microbial benefits as well. So it's very much sought after. Lantana is possibly one of the lowest yielding oils we have, but it's very, very highly sought after in medicinal applications. Okay. Orange is always very popular. So we do a lot of orange peel and lemon peel essential oil. And ginger as well is very popular. It's much sought after by the local drinks industry, along with orange as well. Okay. And apart from these 6, we now have 12 other oils in various stages of development. We're growing vanilla. We have cinnamon, nutmeg, jasmine. We have 5 of the peppers: black pepper, Ethiopian pepper, pink pepper, grains of paradise. Cardamom is not really a pepper, but we have that, you know. And then also we're looking at doing stuff with Oliveira Danieli, which is a local resin tree here in Ghana, and also frankincense from Dazeli from Burkina Faso. So we started off with these 6, but we've now expanded our range to get up to like 20 different oils. We're looking at peppermint and again tea tree because we keep getting asked for it.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that's unique here, when we're talking about you growing aromatic plants and making essential oils, we should note that you are expanding your distillery. You're already distilling these aromatic species in Ghana, and that you're expanding those capabilities to be able to create essential oils and also retail within the African market, within the West African market and across. I mean, I know you also work internationally, but this is very significant that you're doing this, that you're not only shipping out the raw materials, but that you're doing value added products and that you're manufacturing them there in Ghana. And that you're also, we have here this statistic at the bottom, 40% of your essential oils are also being turned into further value-added products such as creams, facial scrubs, hair products, different things. And that this is quite significant, Wellington. Can you please tell us a little bit more? We have about 1 or 2 minutes left before question and answer period. But why is this so important, that you're distilling and manufacturing value-added products in Ghana?
Okay. When we started distilling essential oil products, we had to go out and get local producers to use it. And in the beginning, they were hesitant. But after they started using it, they realized that, yes, on the face of it, our oils seemed expensive compared to what they were importing, but the quality and the potency of it was such that they had to use very little compared to what they were importing, right? And for that, we have to say thank you to APRC for helping us to establish by the rigorous testing they gave our oils that our oils are of a very high quality. So thank you for that, and we look forward to future to more collaborations in the future. You know.
Yes, do we?
So we then decided that okay, we can't throw out, for example, all the hydrosols we're getting as a byproduct from distilling oils, okay? And hydrosols do not cost so much that it makes sense to export them, you know? So we had to then again think of a way of utilizing them. And that is when we decided that, okay, we were going to combine it with things like shea butter, with black soap, natural made soap, etc. Okay, so we were led toward by the desire to be sustainable and to use everything that we were doing. And whilst we were in the process, local producers here and in East Africa who had started using our product wanted assurances that they would be guaranteed a certain amount of product, okay? So we said, okay, we're going to put 40% of that aside to sell across the continent and also for us to utilize ourselves. And during the process of this 40% being put aside, we've realized that with the expected demand coming in from Nigeria, from Kenya, from within our local place in Ghana and South Africa, we're going to have to expand. So we have been working in partnership with EDE, Essential Oils in South Africa, who make all our equipment. They have supplied us with all our equipment today. And we're bringing in a bigger distillery, one in order to be able to absorb the raw material we're getting all these farmers to grow as they are guaranteed off-taker, and two, to increase the volume of that 40% to be able to cater for growing demand.
That's wonderful. Wellington, I know that there's a lot more there to unpack. We definitely have some good questions coming in. So I just want to end the slideshow and move over to the question and answers. So you ready, Wellington? I'm going to read you some questions, okay?
Okay.
Let me see here. Karen from South Africa is asking, is Ghana a signatory of the Nagoya Protocol? And if so, does it benefit the producers of the industry with access and benefit sharing?
Well, Ghana is pretty much part of the Red Plus initiative. I believe the Nagoya protocols all come underneath that. As I have always said, which I try to put forward as forcibly as possible while we were engaged in this Red Plus project globally from 2009 to 2017. A lot of people talk about benefit sharing. We should have more conversations about responsibilities and who is, responsible for creating what, because you can only share benefits after they have been created, right? So that also feeds into our approach of getting the community involved, okay? Because we see that too often in the past. This space has been dominated by NGOs who mean well, okay? But it doesn't help if you come in and ask people to grow a certain crop. And at the end of your project window, which is usually 3 to 4 years, you have all these farmers and all these communities with all these crops, and they have no way to sell them, even though there's an international demand. They do not have the skills to enter into international negotiations, deal with LCs and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So for us, it's not just a question about deciding who gets benefits. It's about engaging people to be part of the process, part of the creation, and part of the sharing as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Wellington. I'm going to take a question here that's on a different topic. There's two questions that are somewhat similar. One is, are you growing both native and non-native species for your short-term income revenue streams? And also the ratio of native to non-native species that you're planting, period.
Okay, well, if it where it relates to tree species, we're growing native tree species. For example, the indigenous tree species that we're growing is over an area of about 75 acres, as opposed to cedrela, which you could look at as an exotic tree species because it came from outside. We're planting about 50 acres of that. Okay. Now, when it comes to herbs and aromatics, etc., yes, we've brought in species from all over Africa. We brought in turmeric and ginger from Zanzibar. Okay, we have our own turmeric and ginger here in Ghana, but we also brought in some from Zanzibar. We brought in the ylang from Madagascar, you know, and we are always looking to bring in new crops, etc., which would then expand the range of crops that communities and farmers would like to grow, because we do not force them to grow anything. We give them a range of choices and leave it pretty much up to them to decide what they want to grow from the palette of crops that are available.
Yeah, that's a great approach. And the issue of native versus non-native species is really a big debate within agroecology, agroforestry, permaculture. You know, these are all interchangeable words for the same thing. And there's the side that feels like, what is native, right? Human beings have been moving plants around the globe for a very long time, and that really that using species that are beneficial, that you can stack functions, that you can put under other tree crops that give economic benefits while not being invasive, right? We don't want to plant things that are going to become problematic for the local ecology, but that
Very
the
much
mixing
so.
of species is something humanity's been doing for a very long time, and moving plants around the globe.
Yes, that's very much so. And even nature itself does that, you know. Once we started with our conservation piece and putting in indigenous tree species, right? There's been an explosion of wildlife, of the insect life, and there's a lot of trees which have just sprang back up by themselves. Okay, so it's like we're just an enabler. We started a process, and then nature just took it over. You know, and that's what the forest is about. It's about diversity, first of all. It's about interconnectedness, okay? And it's about a constant feedback loop, okay? Because that's how it happens. The forest is not like a mono plantation situation, right? It very much tends to diversity. And yes, as you said, if you bring in a species and it's not invasive and it has its benefits. I mean, look at something like cardamom, for example. You would think it's an Indian crop or whatever, but it grows here. And let's not forget that there was a time when all the continents were merged into one. Okay, and evidence of that is that whatever grows in South America grows here. You know, and so long as it is beneficial, there's a demand for it. Yes, why not?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Wellington. It's wonderful to have you here today and to be sharing successes and wonderful things happening in the world and wonderful things that are happening in Africa. It's not all doom and gloom. We can work with nature to bring back ecosystems while also benefiting our livelihoods. We can protect the forest and have jobs at the same time. These things are not mutually exclusive. They're not in competition with each other. The economy is here to serve us. We're not here to serve the economy. And so we make these systems and we can combine them to really have a flourishing environment. And the world needs that right now. These are positive things that we all need. And really, your project has been such an inspiration to me personally and to some of my close colleagues when we visited. And I just want to say thank you to that, and thank you for sharing with the audience and some of our students and experts and doctors from all over the world, different people here coming together and research Aromatica. It was wonderful to have you today, Wellington.
Thank you very much, Anjanette. If I may just add on the tail end of what is native and what is not native.
Absolutely.
We have reached out and we're starting a collaboration with the plant and herbal remedies outfit in Gabon. And they have licensed the iboga plant, right, to be able to be grown outside. And we're in conversations to be one of the first places outside of Gabon to grow the iboga plant. Okay.
Wow.
So this is a case of something which you would say is not exactly native to here, but which can grow and thrive over here because the same conditions exist across West Africa. And collaborations like that help us also in one of the main areas that we're looking at, which is the natural pharmacopoeia, which the forest is, the medicinal plants and the different applications, etc. You know, so coming back to the concept of a green supermarket, if you are able to establish a forest estate, it creates wealth in perpetuity.
Wealth in perpetuity. I love that. People can reach out to you and contact you. I know you're always open to hearing from people. So you can
yes,
certainly.
We're very much present across the whole of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we also have our website up, portalforestestates.org. So we can be reached across any of these media, and we're always happy to share our journey and our experience, and we're also always happy to learn from other people who are engaged in a similar journey from all over the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjanette.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.